Hello and welcome to the ceramic studio. What you're looking at is a 4 to 5 pound block of clay that will be used to make a spoon rest, and I'm going to demonstrate that on the pottery wheel today. Whenever it's finished, it will look something like this, which is small enough to fit a standard spoon, but keep in mind that when you make these in the future, you can make them any size depending on the size of the spoon that you want it to fit. But for demonstration purposes today, I just wanted to keep it at the same scale. But also keep in mind that what you see me make today will be a little bit bigger than the one that I'm holding, just because I had to factor in shrinkage that takes place whenever the clay dries, as well as whenever it will be fired later. So just remember that. So what we need to start with is wedging. And for anyone who is not familiar with the wedging process, that basically means kneading the clay so that we can remove any air pockets that might be inside of it, and just to also make it a solid piece so that it's less lumpy and easier to work with whenever the process begins on the pottery wheel. So all I do is push it forward, fold it back, push it forward, fold it back, and there's many different ways that you can wedge, but that is an easy way to do it if you're a beginner. And it's actually how I wedge most of the time anyway. Just remember that as long as you get the air pockets out of it, that's all that matters. And I do that a few times. This video will also be universal to really any other video that I share that involves pottery, just because every piece that you make needs to be wedged. So this kind of speaks for every video that I create. So I'm just going to do that a few more times. And then what I do is pat it into a ball. So you can do that by hand, or you can also roll it around like that. And it doesn't have to be obviously a perfect sphere, just as long as you're able to get it to a point where you can grip it. And that's just going to make the process easier to start out with on the wheel whenever the throwing begins. So with that said, I'm going to stop the introduction here, and in the next clip we will begin the process on the pottery wheel and make the spoon rest. Hello and welcome to my next segment on designing a spoon rest from the pottery wheel. I have the wheel ready to go and I have the ball of clay ready. First thing that I need to do is make sure that my surface is good and damp, and I'm going to be using a wet sponge to do that. I have a bucket of water here to collect that water from. And just keep in mind that it doesn't need to be soaking wet, it just needs to be wet enough to so that the clay will securely attach to it. Now the bat that I'm using, or the surface that I'm using attached to the wheel, is made of plastic, so when the plastic is wet, that clay is going to attach to it pretty securely if it's on there well enough. But I have to apply a little bit of force to get it on there. At this point I can move it around, but it's not coming off, or at least most likely not. And the first thing that I need to do is be sure that this is perfectly centered. So I'm moving it around at this point to get it as close to the center as I possibly can before I turn the wheel back on. So I'm going to turn it on to a moderate speed, not too fast, but at this point, whenever you're centering, generally the faster it is, the easier it is to center it. But we will slow it down as we continue the process. Now I'm going to be using my body weight to push forward on it. And you saw me review the wedging process in the last clip. You can also do it at this point as well by compressing it and then pushing down, and then repeating that process several times. That is, if you don't feel confident that it's wedged enough. But this is optional overall. You don't have to do this unless you didn't wedge well enough to begin with. Just wanted to show you that part of it. Now at this point it looks like a dome, and the first thing that I need to do, or the next thing rather that I need to do, is put a hole in the top. And I'm bracing the side of it with my left hand, and I say that as a right-handed person because my right hand is going to be doing the rest of the work. Having my left hand on the side is keeping it into the center, because throughout the process the clay will have a tendency to get off center. So there's a groove, and at an angle with my right hand I'm going to go down until I get to the bottom. I'm not going to go all the way through the bottom obviously, but going to stop at a certain point. If you're looking at it from my angle, you'll see that it looks like a funnel going down. Okay, and at this point I'm going to slow the wheel down first. I'm going to take my wet sponge, and I'm compressing the wall of clay with both my hands. And what that does is it makes the clay thinner, and it will grow taller, and that way we can form our shallow dish before we create the spout, which will be what the spoon rests on. Slow that wheel down just a little bit more, because if the wheel is too fast at this point, the clay will be too weak to hold itself together, and it'll start tearing apart. Now the reason why I'm adding water constantly is also for that reason, because if I don't add water, then the clay will be too dry and it will tear apart more easily. So this is just a way to keep it together. So again, I'm forming a shallow dish. I'm gonna drain out that water from my sponge and just wipe it down to where it's not soaking wet at this point. And I can stop the wheel now. And I'm going to show you how to make the lip. And I'm going to try to position this bat in a way to where you can see it better. Prop it up. And I want to make sure that my hands are dry at this point. So I'm going to take a towel and dry those off. And I'm going to use the either my index or middle finger from my left hand as well as my thumb to compress the rim, allowing a couple of inches or so in between both my finger and my thumb. And I'm going to wet my right hand, or the first two fingers, and I'm just going to or the first one or two, you can use both depending on what's comfortable. And I'm just going to move my finger back and forth like that, with my other hand compressing the sides. And that forms the lip. Now you can tell that I've kind of distorted or disfigured the rest of it. There's a way to fix that. I'm going to put the bat back on the wheel. Turn that back on to a slow speed. Rest my finger on the rim, and that will round your form back out. At this point, you've also deformed your spout a little bit again, but you can keep adjusting it if you need to. But guys, that's basically it. That's how you form a spoon rest. Keep in mind that if you're one of my 4-Hers tuning in, this would be a clay container. If you're submitting an item like this into the state fair, it would be titled 757 clay container in the state fair catalog. So this is just an option for you. But for any beginner out there listening, I hope this was helpful to you. And we will catch you another time. Have a good day.